This segment of Delmarva Life is brought to you by Tunnell and Raysor.
It takes 1 second, one bad decision to change many lives, even ending them.
Drinking and driving has been a problem since the invention of cars. And with all the campaigns and stiff legal penalties, people still make that decision.
Today we have the story of two families whose lives will never be the same after a deadly drunk driving crash. One family lost a daughter with a promising future. The other is forced to live with their son's tragic mistake. More than 10 months after college student Renee Robbins was killed in a drunk driving crash, her parents say the pain is still crippling.
This has left a hole in my heart that cannot be filled. I cry every day at the fact that Renee is not around me.
And they blame one man, her classmate, 23-year-old Derek Seber, who agreed to drive Robbins and 6 other students home from an off-campus party last October.
My daughter and her friends simply wanted a safe ride home, not a one-way hell ride down a windy, rainy road.
Seber was twice the legal limit when he got behind the wheel. 18-year-old Robbins, who had dreams of military service and a career in the FBI, died in the arms of a friend when Seber crashed. Robbins' dad is a former Marine and a state trooper.
Instead of dying battling for justice in the American way, she was killed, begging for her life from you, Derek Seber, a confessed drunk driver, coward.
Seber's tearful parents apologized to the Robbins family and vowed to make something positive come from this tragedy.
And the knowledge of what our young and promising son has done, it brings me to my knees on a daily basis.
Seber told the court he will spend the rest of his life educating others on the dangers of drunk driving.
I can assure everyone in this courtroom that alcohol's only part of my future is to prevent this mistake from happening to someone else.
Even good people make terrible mistakes, Mr. Seber, but it's the court's job to hold them to account.
The judge sentenced Seber to 2.5 years behind bars, a sentence the Robbins call a despicable slap on the wrist.
You took my firstborn, my baby girl. For that, I will never forgive you.
And according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the highest percentage, 34% of drunk drivers in 2010, was drivers ages 21 to 24. And every day in America, another 27 people die as a result of drunk driving crashes.
Now, the numbers speak for themselves. Drunk driving is something that has impacted many of us, and one of our viewers shared her story with us. Crystal Lee of Salisbury says, I was hit by a drunk driver when I was 10. I was going to North Carolina to see my grandparents for Easter. The drunk driver ran a stop sign and hit us and flipped our car into a ditch. I fractured my pelvis and nose and collarbone, lots of bruises. The other driver died on impact. My seatbelt is what saved me.
And in other DUI cases, WBOC recently ran the story of a 33-year-old Dover man arrested for his, get this, 5th DUI offense. In another case, a 70-year-old Kent County woman was arrested on DUI charges for the 5th time as well.
And in Maryland, police arrested a 35-year-old Denton man last year for his 8th DUI offense. It seems like we always hear about cases like these. How does this keep happening? And joining us today to provide some insight, John Horner, an associate at Tunnell and Raysor in Sussex County. So, John, you know, we're talking all these, the punishments, the severity that comes along with this, but yet people still do this. They don't understand, I guess, what can happen down the road.
Right, and I think people don't realize that, you know, they get behind the wheel of the car after they've been drinking, people die. And a lot of times people just think, well, I need a ride home from the bar, or, you know, it's easier to do this, but really it's not, because even if, you know, you don't hurt yourself, you could hurt somebody else. And it's a lot cheaper to get a cab.
Absolutely.
Certainly.
Now let's talk about the legalities of drunk driving, the penalties, I guess. What if I'm the one who is arrested for drinking and driving?
Well, penalties for DUI include things, jail time, fines, license suspensions, substance abuse classes, ignition interlock, where you're required to breathe into your car in order for it to start. The penalties are going to depend a lot on the specific circumstances related to your DUI, as well as the individual's past history of driving under the influence related offenses.
We should mention too, your first offense has a maximum of 6 months with no minimum, and basically you start out and then exponentially, I guess the punishments grow from there, the penalties.
Right. The state is in Delaware said, DUI is bad, and if you continue to do it, they're really going to throw the book at you. So, your first DUI, you're looking at a maximum of 6 months in jail, $1,500 fine, a license suspension of up to 2 years, as well as potential alcohol classes. After that, it just gets much, much, much worse. You're looking at potential punishments, up to a minimum of 10 years for a 7th offense, and they just keep going up and up.
And that leads to our next question. When is the crime so serious that the offender has to do some serious time?
Well, you're going to start having mandatory jail time in Delaware with your second DUI. Your second DUI automatically is going to lead to 60 days in jail. Your third DUI is going to become a felony with a 1-year minimum. And the way Delaware has it set up is they keep getting worse and worse and worse up to your 7th conviction requiring 10 years in jail and up to a maximum of 15 to the judge's discretion.
We just talked about several people who are repeat offenders, so to speak, 6, 7, 8 DUIs. How do these people even still have a license?
Well, the thing is, a lot of times they don't. A lot of times if they're irresponsible enough to, drive under the influence, they're irresponsible enough to drive without a license. So even if their license is suspended, they're out there, they're still on the roads, they're still drinking and driving. And for the people that have rehabilitated, there's been a long time between their last DUI. They may have, gone out past that suspension period. It really depends on, what they were sentenced and how long it's been since their license was suspended.
So the 4th offense is when we really see or 4th DUI conviction or higher. That's when they get their license suspended for 5 years.
Right. You're going to see with the 4th offense, it's going to be a mandatory 60-month, 5-year suspension. You're going to start seeing mandatory suspensions with every DUI, though. Your first DUI, your suspension is going to be a year, up to 2 years, depending on what your BAC, your blood alcohol content was at the time and within the judge's discretion, going all the way up to a maximum of 5 years. With your 4th and later offense. So it's serious time without a license, which really impacts your ability to, hold and maintain a job and really live your life.
It affects so many other parameters of life. And on the flip side of all this, say I'm a driver who's been hit by someone who was drinking. What are my rights?
Well, you're going to have rights in a civil and a criminal sense. In a civil sense, you're going to be able to, seek personal injury lawsuit against the individual. If they have insurance, you can likely collect for your injuries, your lost work, personal damages to your car, automobile. If on the criminal side, a lot of times the attorney general prosecuting the case is going to want to hear from the victim. So they're going to want to, understand where you are, how you feel about the defendant's actions, if you are, okay with some leniency, if you want the book thrown at them, and then even at sentencing, a lot of times you're going to have a victim impact statement where the individual will get an opportunity to be heard by the judge to kind of say, how the actions of the defendant have impacted their lives.
And if a victim is involved, there's obviously more charges than just the DUI.
Right, and a lot of times, I'm giving the punishments for a DUI, but if you're driving under the influence and you have a situation like what we saw in the lead-in story, you're going to look at, vehicular homicide, manslaughter charges that are, the DUI is the least of your problems from a standpoint of that. You're talking, years and years and years in jail for those charges in addition to the DUI charges. So it's really, DUI can lead to a lot more serious things.
So
Bottom
case
line,
in point, that split-second decision can have ramifications for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
So be smart about it.
don't drink and drive. All right, John, thank you so much. Good information for us this afternoon. If you'd like more information from Tunnell and Raysor, go to delmarvalife.com and click on the show tab.